So this is a question I get asked often on this channel and in just real life whenever I say that I'm training to become a counsellor, or especially even in my course, I've been asked, how do you feel about being such a young counsellor and how do your clients respond to it? I've had this question in different forms in the short time that I've been training. So I'm making this video just to clarify the age allowance on counselling training, and I'm going to speak specifically on the opposing side. So being a young counsellor and being a much older counsellor, because sometimes people often ask, am I too young to be a counsellor? And some people often ask, is it too late for me to be a counsellor? Because, I'm much older now, I'm close to retirement, or I just want to switch careers, but I'm in my 40s, I'm in my 50s, it might be a bit too late. So I'm going to speak on that in this video. So I'm going to share all the reasons why you can be a counsellor, whether you're 23 or 53 or even retired. So let's get into it. First of all, I just like to make it very, very clear. I think it's important that we have counsellors of all ages. Like I said, whether you're 23, 63 or anything in between, it's extremely important that we have counsellors of all ages, because everyone needs a counsellor of different ages, different backgrounds, different life experiences. It wouldn't be nice, or it wouldn't be fair to only have a certain age of counsellors available to you, especially if you needed somebody who you could relate to more for whatever reason, or you wanted somebody who had more life experience than you, or who was of the opposite age to you. And some people generally don't mind what age their counsellor is, but the point is, I think it's nice that you can pick a variety of different counsellors based on different things. Some people want counsellors who are the same age as them. If you're a new mum, maybe you'd want a counsellor who looks like she's probably old enough to have had children, or somebody who's a lot older, who's more experienced in life than you from their age. And imagine just how horrible it would be if you only had the option of picking people who are only in their 40s, or only people who are in their 50s, or only people who are in their 20s. Like, imagine how horrible it would be to only have a limited pool of ages of counsellors to pick from. So everybody needs somebody at different ages. Personally, I think I've had counsellors who are mostly obviously all older than me, but they've been varied. I think I've had counsellors in their 30s, 40s and 50s. And it's been nice to see the different variation. It has not made a big difference to me, but what has made a big difference to me is their level of experience. So the older ones tend to have more experience in terms of how long they've been counsellors for, not necessarily life experience, because my experiences are very different to them. So they can't necessarily speak on my experience or help me on my experiences. But it hasn't made a big difference to me, but to some other people it does make a big difference. So just remember that and keep that in mind if you're still deciding whether this is the right career for you, whether you should change your careers, whether you should switch, whether you should even entertain this as a lifetime career if you're young. There's somebody out there that needs you at the age that you are, with the experience that you have or don't have. Somebody needs you, and somebody out there is suited for you the same way somebody is suited for me. And I'm going to share some of my weird client experiences that I've had and how my young age has been a positive factor, and sometimes that it doesn't actually even matter, and sometimes it doesn't even bother my clients. So second of all, there's this assumption that to be a counsellor, you need to have had all this life experience, and therefore you can only be a counsellor if you're a bit older, if you're a bit more mature. And that is absolutely not true, especially when it comes to being a counsellor. Like I said, you can't always relate to somebody on their life experience. One of my counsellors was like a white man in his 50s. I'm a young black girl in my 20s. We have not had similar life experiences at all. No amount of his life experience can help me with my life experience, because it's very different. I was born abroad, I came to this country. He was probably born here and raised here. Very different culture, very different time. So there's not much that he can help me with in terms of life experience. But what can help me is his experience, whether that's 10, 15, 20 years as a counsellor, is what's going to help me, and his ability to relate to people. And age didn't have much to do with that. Being a counsellor is a taught skill. It hasn't got anything to do with age. So at any age, you can learn how to be a good counsellor. So that's why age is quite irrelevant when you come to deciding whether you'd be a good counsellor at this age or that age. We learn empathy and listening, which is not an average skill that most people have, but we learn to master that skill because of the training we have. If you don't have that skill, then it doesn't really matter how old you are, because you can always learn that skill at any age. Like, you can learn most skills at any age. Same goes for counselling. It's a skill that you learn. So one of my oldest clients is actually in her 50s. She's obviously got more life experience than me, but I'm better equipped in certain things, and my strengths are her weaknesses. So I'm able to help her with that, because where her weakness might be something like confidence or self-esteem, I have a lot of confidence and self-esteem. So I can help her with that because I'm already at the place where she wants to be. So it doesn't matter that I'm younger than her. I actually found out recently that one of her children is actually the same age as me. And I was just like, if she knew that, I don't know how she'd feel about the fact that she's getting therapy from somebody who's the same age as her child. Because, most people wouldn't expect that. But I've noticed some of my clients can't tell how old I am. The thing that shows me that it's not really about age is the fact that my client continues to come back time and time again. And like I was saying, some of my clients, I don't think they can actually tell how old I am, because like I said, most people expect that you're more mature because you're in a mature field and you're, talking on emotional intelligence, you're talking about attachments, you're talking about trauma and this and blah, 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 and you're displaying all this wisdom. And one of my clients a few weeks ago was like, I don't know how old you are exactly. I don't know whether you're like in your 20s or 30s. I don't know if you're older or younger than me. And in my head, I was just like, yeah. I'm not going to tell you though. She wasn't asking directly. She was just saying it out loud. I mean, it answered a question that I had. I was like wondering if my clients can tell, because sometimes I wear makeup, sometimes I don't. And I look quite different. When I'm not wearing makeup, sometimes people are like, oh, you look 16, 19. And when I wear makeup, sometimes I can look a bit more my age. Sometimes I can look a bit older. But my point is that with my clients, some of them have been married, divorced, some of them have kids. And I've never been through any of these things. But they still come back to me because I still display empathy. I listen. I show understanding. I provide them with wisdom, I give them guidance, and I help them to get from where they are to where they want to be. And that's what matters. And that's why they keep coming back to me. If I wasn't doing those things, the skills that I have will stay with me and will continue to help people no matter how old I am. Being a counsellor is a skill that's not age dependent. It's a skill that anyone can learn at any age. On the other hand, some of you might think you're too young, and I totally understand. Like I said, on my course, it has been pointed out to me multiple times. Hey, how does it feel? You're young, and do you feel like this? And I'm like, well, I can understand, like, if you have imposter syndrome about going into the field where it's dominated by much older people, some people who might be old enough to be your parents, your aunties, your uncles. I think on my course, I'm actually probably the second youngest, if not the youngest. I think I'm definitely the second youngest or the third youngest. So I definitely understand that the first day that I walked into my course, I looked into the room and I saw a lot of older people, like grey hair everywhere. And I was like, oh, this must be the PhD group. And then I walked around, came back and realised it was my class. And I was like, oh, this is who I'm going to be studying with. And I was like, I'm not going to make any friends on this course because everybody here is old enough to be my mom. It was kind of a bit disheartening, and I did feel a bit of imposter syndrome when I walked in, because I feel like they were looking at me like, are you in the right place? And the same goes when I was doing my level 3 diploma. I think I was the youngest in the class, and most people were 30s, 40s, 50s, and I think we even had one lady in her 60s. So being the youngest, I think if anything should give you confidence. It should give you a boost of confidence and should encourage you. And I know it's easy to feel imposter syndrome, but just because most people around you are older doesn't mean that you're not in the right place. I look at it in a good way, that I found this purpose and a job that I love at such a young age, because most people come into this and transition from other careers 20, 30 years into their careers, and they transition later on in life. So if you're young, just look at it as the blessing that you found your path and you found your purpose early on in life. And another thing is, when I was working in schools, I noticed, my supervisor and some people on my course said, it's probably a nice thing that the young people have you, because they're probably more comfortable speaking to somebody who's younger than somebody who's older, who reminds them of their teachers or their parents, who are the people that are probably making them feel bad or making them feel worse about themselves. So to have somebody who is like a mirror reflection of them, much younger, and is not on a parent or teacher pedestal, is probably a lot more comforting for them and allows them to open up more. And I definitely felt that a lot of my clients were able to relate to me a lot. I understood their lingo, the way they speak, I understood the slang and the language that they use, because I have been there not too long ago and I'm still somewhat like them in some ways. And it allows the therapeutic alliance to build a lot better and a lot quicker. So automatically, the fact that I'm younger reduces the power dynamic that might be created by them because they're with somebody who's older. So if you're like 16, 17, 18, even 15 or, younger, and you're feeling like, oh, maybe I want to be a counsellor one day, or this is something I'd like to do, it's definitely at the right time, because you can start as young as 17 or 16. I think foundation level 2, level 3, I think you can even start at 16 or 17. If not, then you can definitely start at 18, which means by the time that you're a fully qualified counsellor, you'll probably be like 21 or 22 or even younger than that, depending on when you start. I think the more young counsellors that we have, the better, because it's definitely a field that lacks diversity in terms of age, and I think a lot of people would appreciate having younger therapists. Like I said before, being young doesn't mean that you don't have the maturity or the life experience to be a counsellor. You can still be a counsellor as long as you're willing to learn the skills. And to be honest, it gives you more time to even build upon your skills, and by the time you're like 30 or 25 or something, you'll probably have a lot more experience than somebody who trained at 40 and has only been a counsellor for 3-4 years. So don't let your age keep you away from training to become a counsellor. Like I said, on the flip side, to some clients, your age absolutely does not matter. Some clients don't give a damn about your age. As long as you're helping them, you're being empathetic, you're listening to them, you're being understanding, you're being professional, you're doing your job. They literally could not care less about your age. I don't think any clients have directly asked me how old I am. Most of them obviously assume. Online, it's a bit harder for them to guess. Face to face, they can kind of have more opportunities to guess how old I am because of my height, my body, my build, the kind of clothes I wear. But I feel like, in all honesty, from my experience, most clients don't give a damn how old you are, so don't worry about that. And I feel like even if they knew how old I was, I don't think it would make much of a difference, because if anything, they might be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're so young and you're a counsellor, and they probably would be like, oh, it's amazing that you've come to this. But some of them might feel like, oh, okay, I want somebody who's a bit more mature. But because of the work we've done so far, I don't feel like any of my clients would turn my back on me because they find out that I'm 25. I hope that this video clears up any concerns about going into counselling training. You're not too young, you're not too old, you're the perfect age for somebody out there. Like, somebody out there needs you, and I'm going to keep reiterating that. Somebody out there needs you. So go do your training. I know financially it's hard, it's not easy, but I have videos on that, so don't you worry about that. But if it's an age thing, if that's like the biggest thing that's holding you back, I'm telling you now, nobody cares, and the people that do care, somebody wants you and somebody needs your age and your experience and your expertise. So go for it. I wish you the absolute best and see you in the next video. Bye.